Business exists only to meet the needs of the people. But there's an extra advantage if your product and services are pitched on a platform that gives you the added advantage over your competitors. For your desired return on investment and so much more, advertise on Spectrum Television, on StarTimes DTH Channel 421 and on free-to-air with a frequency of 12733. Spectrum Television, broadening your horizon.
Alright, good day and welcome on today's special edition of the show. It's always nice to have you join us. This is Political Spectrum coming to you live from Uyo, the state's capital. And I remain your host, Onumese Ehinoma Olusegun. As Nigeria marks her 63rd Independence Day celebration as one sovereign nation and a republic, how has our dear nation fared? What is the fate of the largest black nation on earth? All these will form part of our discussions today. Always remember that on this show our conversations continue on everyday political and economic developments in our dear nation Nigeria, especially as it marks its 63rd year of independence, and our objective clearly is to always try as much as possible to make available vital information, arguments and conversations to consequently deepen our dear democracy, as well as contribute our little quota genuinely towards nation building. Now, on President Tinubu's administration's calendar, today is October the 2nd, Monday, 2023, and it marks exactly 127 days of President Bola Tinubu in office as the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. This is now exactly 4 months and 7 days as Commander-in-Chief of the largest black nation on earth. Now we begin with the President's Independence Day speech, very promising. But real quick, to make it very interesting, we will take on the major highlights of Tinubu's independence speech. Now, President Bola Tinubu addressed Nigerians on Sunday in his first independence anniversary speech as President of the Federal Republic. Mr. Tinubu spoke on different issues ranging from Nigeria's diversity, unity, justice, economic policies and security. While he acknowledged that some of his government's reforms were difficult and painful for Nigerians, the president affirmed that they were inevitable, given that they hold the key to transforming the economy and advancing prosperity among the populace. Now let us pick a few of the highlights. The first was hope. On October 1st, 1916, Nigeria gained its independence from Britain following years of struggle for sovereignty by leaders from various ethnic groups in Nigeria. This year marks 63rd of the independence. The years since independence have been turbulent and unstable, but Mr. Tinubu said there is hope for the country. The president sells hope as his first major key highlight. Now I said, and I quote, "On this solemn yet hopeful day, let us commend our founding fathers and mothers. Without them, there will be no modern Nigeria. From the fading embers of colonialism, the activism, dedication, and leadership gave life to the belief in Nigeria as a sovereign and independent nation. Now, the triumphs that Nigeria has achieved shall define us The travails you have endured shall strengthen us, and no other nation or power on this earth shall keep us from our rightful place and destiny. The nation belongs to you, dear people. Love and cherish it. It's your very own, he said. A lot of people have commented that part of his speech. The next one he highlighted was that of unity. He affirmed that one of the most important assets of the country is its diversity and human capital. He urged citizens to remain united, as that's the only path to success. He says, and I quote, Nigeria is remarkable in its formation and essential character. Mr. Tinubu said, we are broad and dynamic blend of ethnic groups, religions, traditions, and culture. Yet our bonds are intangible, yet strong, invincible, yet universal. We are joined by a common thirst for peace and progress, by the common dream of prosperity and harmony, and by the unifying ideals of tolerance and justice. The president's speech is at a time when Nigeria's national integration is being threatened by separatists and insurgents. Mr. Tinubu said Nigeria's unity is non-negotiable. A lot of people also appreciated that part. He said forging a diverse and populous nation such as Nigeria has been a task of significant blessings, but also a serial challenge. Some people have said on independence Nigeria should never have come into existence. Some have said that our country would be torn apart. They are forever mistaken. Here our nation stands, and here we shall remain. You know, very reassuring. Then he talks about democracy. He talks about democracy. It's been 24 years of uninterrupted democracy in Nigeria, even though some argue that democracy has not delivered dividends or development. Mr. Tinubu said it remains the best form of government. This year, Nigeria has also witnessed its 7th consecutive general election since 1999. By this, the president said we passed a significant milestone in our journey to a better Nigeria, and the country has proven that commitment to democracy and the rule of law remains our guiding light. Now he began to touch on the major issues that are bedeviling the economy of the nation. He talked about fuel subsidy. And he said he scrapped the decade-old petrol subsidy during his inauguration in May and ended foreign exchange restrictions, which has led to the soaring cost of living and angered labor unions. Now, in his Sunday speech, the president said that this is part of bold reforms that were necessary to place the nation on the path of prosperity and growth. He said, and I quote, I'm attuned to the hardships that have come. He realizes there are hardships. I have a heart that feels and eyes that see. He noted that those who sought to perpetuate the fuel subsidy and broke foreign exchange policies were people who would build their family mansions in the middle of a swamp. He said that. Now he says again, and I quote, I'm different. I'm not a man to erect a national home on a foundation of mud. That was how he ended that part. Now he also touched on reforms. He noted that his administration has embarked on several public sector reforms to stabilize the economy and direct fiscal and monetary policy to fight inflation. He said the reforms aim to encourage production, ensure the security of lives and property, and lend more support to the poor and the vulnerable. However, the president acknowledged that the reforms may be painful but are needed to acquire a great future for Africa's most populous country. He says, and I quote, we now carry the cost of reaching a future Nigeria where the abundance and fruits of the nation are fairly shared among all, not hoarded by a select greedy few, in Nigeria where hunger, poverty, and hardship are pushed into the shadows of an ever-fading past. That was how he ended that. He also touched on palliatives. Then he now moved to a second one. We all know what palliatives are. He now moved to the 7th one. He moved to the 7th major issue he talked about. And, you know, he said a lot of things, but the most touching of those things was the CBN reform. The Nigerian leader had ordered a thorough house cleaning of the Central Bank of Nigeria because the institution has become a den of malfeasance, he said. And I quote him, my special investigator will soon present his findings on past lapses and how to prevent similar recurrence. Henceforth, monetary policy shall be for the benefit of all and not the exclusive province of the powerful and wealthy. A new leadership for the central bank was constituted last week, which was the Brazilian, the guy with the Brazilian name. I can't remember right now. And the Senate confirmed the CBN governor and 4 other deputy governors, which had long commenced work. On his 8th point, he talked about tax reforms, and we all know all the things he said about tax reform. So we will move to the 9th point now. I haven't, talked about constituting officers that will take care of taxes and changing policies on tax. He now touched on the most critical issue also, which is security. Security affects the economy, affects politics, affects everything. And on security, he said protecting the lives of the people and their property remains the highest priority of his administration. Now, according to him, inter-service collaboration and intelligence sharing have been enhanced. He says, and I quote, "Our service chiefs have been asked and they've been tasked with the vital responsibility of rebuilding the capacities of our security services." He also commended the security forces for keeping Nigeria safe and secure, especially within the territorial integrity. So many have paid the ultimate sacrifice. Remember them today and their families. We shall equip our forces with the ways and means needed to perform their urgent task on behalf of the people. All right. So he has said a lot of things, but we tried to put it, to highlight majority of the things they said. And ever since that speech, it has constituted a lot of, conversations back and forth for and against. Of course, there is no president in the history of Nigeria that has ever, written a speech that gets everybody satisfied. He touched on a lot of things, and he said that, okay, he knows Nigeria has issues and that will feel the pain of some of the policies, but according to him, it will be for the greater good. Now, while he was giving that speech, he had in mind also that he had an immediate issue he was going to have to deal with, and that is organized labor. And then we move into the next level of the report, where 24 hours to the nationwide strike, which is expected to be on the 3rd, federal government's meeting with NLC TUC ended in some sort of deadlock. Now, the meeting between the federal government and organized labor yesterday ended in a deadlock as leaders of Nigerian Labour Congress and their Trade Union Congress of Nigeria counterparts rejected the government's offers. Now, sources at the meeting told media that the labor leaders rejected President Bola Tinubu's 25,000 provisional wage award for low-grade workers to cushion the effects of the removal of the petrol subsidy. Now, the labor leaders told Attorney General of the Federation, Lateef Fagbemi, to prepare to take all of them to jail because the government has been threatening them with a court order saying this is not in any way acceptable. Now, recall that President Tinubu, in his nationwide broadcast on the occasion of Nigeria's 63rd independence, had said, based on our talks with labor, business, and other stakeholders, that we are introducing a provisional wage increment to enhance the federal minimum wage without causing undue inflation. Now, for the next 6 months, the average low-grade worker shall receive an additional 25,000 naira per month. Now, that 25,000 naira per month, we later learned that it was increased to 35,000 naira. And then they assured that commencing from this month, which is October, the social safety net is being extended through the expansion of cash transfer programs to an additional 15 million vulnerable households. I want to believe that at that meeting, it was the NLC that consciously added or argued, that it must be increased to 15 million households. However, media sources reliably gathered that organized labor, in its meeting with the federal government team at the permanent conference room, Presidential Villa Abuja, rejected 25,000 naira provisional wage award and demanded 200% of the current minimum wage. Besides, labor insisted that the provisional wage increase should be for all workers and not for the low cadre. Now, pending the enactment of a new minimum wage act next year and must not be limited to only 6 months. Now, let's hear what Joe Ajero has to say after the meeting.
The chief of staff have said we have been meeting, we have looked at almost all the issues, all the promissory notes, from the government. And we looked at how to translate them to reality, and to be workable. And then we're going to take those promises to our organs. Of course, these people here cannot just wake up and review and call off action. So, like he said, we're hopeful that our organs will have a look at them and give us a fresh mandate on what next to do.
Let me, on behalf of the TUC, also point out to the fact that we've had a series of conversations surrounding the issue raised, and we do hope that by tomorrow we are going to get across to our organs so that we can also look at it and cross-fertilize ideas and see the way forward. I'm sure we are coming back again.
With Labour and government side, since 3 o'clock, we're now at 7 o'clock, so it's been about a 4-hour meeting. A lot of issues were addressed, issues that concern the Nigerian worker, the average Nigerian worker, pertinent issues. I can't begin to reel them out here, but I am happy to say that after 4 hours, we have reached certain agreements that inure to the benefit of the Nigerian worker. Agreements on wage bill, agreements on committees, on salary increment, agreement on the CN bosses, agreement on several other things, I believe, both TUC, Labour, and government side. We will, hopefully, we expect that Labour will call a meeting of their various branches and executive tomorrow to present the agreements that have been reached, and we pray and we believe and we hope that the strike will be called off on Tuesday. Twitter, there was a lot of chatter on Twitter about the issue of low income workers only falling into the category of the wage bill, and they spotted that, and that has we did communicate with Mr. President, and he quickly did say and agree that that all categories of workers will be given the wage bill. There's nothing like low income, mid income, or high income. It's very important for us to underscore something. Labour and government are not adversaries. Labour and government are working, at least with.
Now, after many hours of horse trading, the Chief of Staff, Femi Gbajabiamila, who is leading the government's delegation, broke the meeting for the government team to consult with the president on the new demands. Gbajabiamila was accompanied by Minister of Labour and Employment Simon Lalong, and other issues raised by the NLC and TUC leaders included tax rebates for low-income earners, removal of value-added tax, VAT, on diesel for the next 6 months, and provision of CNG, that's compressed natural gas, and buses within the next 2 months. Now, the meeting that commenced about 3:25 p.m. ended around 7:15 p.m. to reconvene by 4 p.m. today. Labour's National Executive Committee will also meet today, hold their Executive Council meeting to brief NEC members about the offer by the government. Now, the NEC is expected to take a position and give the leaders the new mandate to take to the government. But briefing journalists after the meeting, the Chief of Staff to the President and leader of the government team announced that Tinubu accepted organized labor's demand that the wage award be across board. Now, he said, and I quote, "We've been at a closed-door meeting with Labour and government side since 3 o'clock, so it's been about 4 hours or thereabout a meeting. A lot of issues were addressed, issues that concern the Nigerian workers, the average Nigerian worker, and he says he can't begin to enumerate all, you heard him, but he's happy to say that after 4 hours, they have reached certain agreements that are for the benefit of the average Nigerian worker." Now it's getting interesting. Agreements on the wage bill, with the committees on salary increments, CNG buses, on several other things. And according to him, he believes that Labour and government will be on the same side. Hopefully, according to him, he expects that Labour will call a meeting of their various branches and executives tomorrow which is today, to present the agreements that have been reached. And they pray and believe that hope that the strike will be called off tomorrow. So according to him, he wants to once again thank Labour for taking time out on a good Sunday like yesterday, when they should be with their families, to come and discuss in the interest of the workers. And that was that about that. And I also understand, I don't know whether my producer can bring the slide that talks about the federal government NLC conditions, because there were some conditions, you know, that were enumerated. Yes. So these were the highlights of the meeting. The federal government urged labor unions not to embark on strike actions, as the issue in dispute can only be resolved when workers are at work. So the federal government is already reading its riot act by saying that if you want to negotiate with federal government, you must be seen to be at work and not, you know, on strike. Now the second one was very clear. Labor unions made case for higher wage award. The third one, a subcommittee to be constituted to work out the details of implementation of all items regarding government interventions to cushion the effect of fuel subsidy. Then the lingering matter of the Road Transport Employers Association (RTAN) will also be addressed. Then NLC and TUC will consider the offers by the federal government with a view to suspending the planned strike to allow for further consultations on the implementation of the above stuff. So you find out that at least for the first time, federal government has taken labor a little bit more seriously. Now, this highlights, we are going to come back to it and probably discuss it robustly, where I'm going to be introducing my guests, so that we'll have, you know, all the important conversations around Nigeria at 63. If you just tuned in, it's Political Spectrum on Spectrum Television. We'll take a short break. Thereafter, we'll be right back, you know, to get into the nitty-gritty of this conversation. Stay tuned. Join us again.
Nigeria, our motherland.
The source of our strength.
The root of our identity.
The bastion of our freedom.
Pride.
Honor.
And beliefs.
Happy Independence Day.
As Nigeria turns 63,
We can only hope to be knitted together, even tighter.
In brotherhood and unity.
May the labors of our heroes past never be in vain.
And may our labors for a great country,
Where growth and love reign supreme, be rewarded.
Happy Independence Day, Nigeria.
From all of us at Tough Media Group, owners of Planet FM, Tunxio FM, and Spectrum TV.
All right, welcome back and many thanks for staying tuned. If you're just tuned in, it is Political Spectrum on Spectrum Television, and the agenda has been laid. Today is yesterday marked 63rd independence of Nigeria, as they call it, giant of Africa, the largest black population on earth, faced with a lot of challenges, new administration, and a plethora of issues. Time will never be enough for us to exhaust all these issues. But I have with me Citizen MKO Matthew Kofi O'Connor. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Citizen MKO is the Executive Director of Open Forum, a very dogged civil society person and an interventionist that loves to talk about issues that deepen democracy and contribute towards nation building. Good morning, sir. How are you doing?
Thank you very much.
Happy 63rd Independence Day.
Same to you.
Quite a while. It's been quite a while before you came to my studio. It's been quite a while.
You decided that we do it
virtually,
and it's good to be here. I like it live.
It's good. It's good. All right, real quick, because time has been seriously shortened. Yeah. We have to go through some few things to, set the template. Nigeria at 63. 24 years of uninterrupted democracy. Wow. Uninterrupted democracy. I wanted to set a tone for the status of Nigeria as we speak.
First of all, I want to congratulate Nigerians. It's our 63rd anniversary as an independent nation. Independent country. I don't like using the term nation where we are still struggling to become a nation. There's a difference between a nation and a country. We are a country. And when you look back at what Chief Obafemi Awolowo said, he described Nigeria as a geographic expression. So there has been challenges from onset. And we must not lose guard to the effect that we are a liberated people. Inasmuch there are some strings attached here and there that we seem to be dependent on foreign interventionist organizations to even be who we are, to even be able to pay salaries. But we are free. So if we are free, we should be able to use our minds. Looking back at Nigeria, I was just trying to look at the history. I think it was 1957 or 58. It was October, all the same, that Britain, our colonial masters, decided that we are going to have independence, and which eventually happened in 1960.
Yeah, October the 1st.
Yes, October 1st. Before then, some sections of the country were ready for independence. Another section was not. Those in the south were ready for it, but the north said we are not ready. Until finally, the delay came, and eventually became an independent people. What I want us to really take note of is the agreement that made the North and the South to agree to be a country. That agreement was on the basis that we are going to run a federal system.
A federal system, yeah.
Which entailed regions having a level of autonomy and looking at the center for specific roles.
So in other words, the regions will be federating units.
Federating units. And the system of governance was the parliamentary system. If that was not agreed upon, I tell you, we would never have had independence, because our forebears were very specific on what they wanted. They knew that it would be impossible to develop a country as vast as Nigeria,
culturally diverse
in everything. We are said to have up to 300 up to 400 tribes and languages. Not really true. I have tried to dispute that on a radio station. We don't have that number of tribes and languages. What has happened in that direction is that
they counted dialects
and as languages,
yes.
and then a people as ethnic nationalities, which even some have hooked onto that now to even cause problem in some parts of the country. Yeah, that aside. Yes. So our major leaders then, who were very sacrificial, who were ready to lay down their lives, knew what was good and what would be good for us as a people. And the experiment already carried out before the independence was clear. You look at the Southwest, you look at the Southeast, they had clear development plans, particularly the Southwest. The premier there, Chief Obafemi Awolowo, that has become like, I don't know how to describe him. He is somebody that is respected. While he was alive, he was respected. While he's gone now, when you mention him, it evokes an emotion that there was a leader, that is a model leader somewhere. In the education sector, every sector. So, but what transpired? When the military struck in 1966, the first thing they did was to destroy the very basis why we became an independent country. And that was what? Federalism was jettisoned for a unitary state. The Iransi coup took Nigeria far behind, and unfortunately, after the war, the incoming military still found that as a good idea to run Nigeria as a unitary state. Everything boils down to the center. As if that was not bad enough. The advent of democracy in 1979, that was the first time we were getting back to democratic processes. The incoming administration did not do anything about returning Nigeria to a federation. We are only a federation in name, Federal Republic of Nigeria. But in practice, we are a unitary state. So that has affected our growth. That will continue to affect. There's hardly much anybody can do if we do not tinker with who we really are. We cannot deny who we are and assume that anybody, any right-thinking person will take us seriously. So, at 63, yes, we are not where we were, but are we where we are supposed to be? We are far behind where we are supposed to be. And as we speak, I want to commend President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The level of what we normally call celebration has been played, toned down. And I also expect...
A lot of people have argued that the reason why there won't even be celebration is because there's fire underneath the government. Because even while all these things and horse trading and conversations were going on, we know that by tomorrow NLC is supposed to start on an indefinite strike, and which is supposed to, we all know the implications of a nationwide strike. It is going to be like ×4 of what Nigerians are feeling as we speak. And people are even saying that what Nigerians are feeling now is worse than how they were feeling under Buhari. So there was no way, I think a reasonable government wouldn't spend budget billions to celebrate an independence when there is fire on the mountain.
If you know politicians for who they are, they try to play down on serious issues to show that all is well. For Labour, I have said this on this very station, on this very program, that I am not comfortable with the demands Labour has brought. I am not comfortable, even watching while you were playing the clips, Labour and government. You know that government has not been serious about resolving whatever matters, even the ones they have agreed. It's been tradition of different governments even before now. But this very administration, when Mr. President was sworn in on May 29, 2023, at that podium there, he made a statement that changed everything about who we are economically and that politically and otherwise. Fuel subsidy is gone for good. And that has destroyed people's livelihood, that has put governments where they never thought they would be. And a committee was set up because Labour was proactive to say, Mr. President, see where you have brought us to. The first day of your swearing in, we won't accept this thing. We have to talk. And government was proactive then by setting up a committee, presidential committee, to interface with Labour. That committee was to finish its work in August.
Yeah.
But from what we have been hearing and seeing, that committee refused
to even start talking
to meet with Labour. Anytime they fix a meeting, I think it's about 20-man, 18 or 20-man committee. They will just send 3 people there, and Labour will say this is not it. Even when they met the minister, after the minister was appointed, Minister for Labour, Solomon Lalong, His Excellency Solomon Lalong, that meeting, people said it was a meeting between Labour and the federal government, and it turned out, for me, I call it a courtesy call by Labour to the new minister, because the minister sounded helpless. He said, the demands you make, I cannot speak on them, it is federal government. I said, who are you? You are a member of the Federal Executive Council. You are representing the federal government. And then you invited these people for a meeting. You did not extract anything.
I think what Lalong did then, everything happened too fast. He was just inaugurated as minister, and he had not gone through the entire brief and history of negotiation.
Nothing happened.
So he was bereft of information
at all,
and he had to go into the meeting. But he addressed the press, and I watched it. And it was obvious that he was not yet in tune with what the conversations had been and the history, so as to continue. And even the president said the same. That, hey, I'm just coming in and you guys are already attacking me.
Now
give me time to look through what these demands are, vis-a-vis what the issues are and what we can afford. But I want to move to my next question.
No, I want to say something about
yes, I will. Let it be double.
Okay.
I want to move. My next question now is, do you now feel that in the past, this is about 127 days of Tinubu as president, do you now feel that the presidency has taken Labour a little bit more serious? So add it to the statement.
Yes, first of all, for His Excellency Solomon Lalong, the Minister for Labour and Employment, to have said, for you to believe, when your name is sent, some of them even had clue of which ministry you are going to.
But this is Nigeria.
No, it doesn't matter. No. Nigeria is not about people that have
failed. It's not confirmed.
No, it doesn't matter.
If you notice, what's the name of this guy from Auchi, Edo State? Initially, his ministry portfolio was not Niger Delta Affairs.
Yes.
Imagine he had been briefed about the initial ministry, and then
before he was
after a while he was moved.
Whatever happened, maybe it's because of how some of us think. Some of us are very proactive. Some of us are too prepared. When we see people fail, you just wonder if you are dreaming, because you can't. By the time you enter office, you've been a citizen of this country. You are aware of issues in virtually every sector. You have to just call the director in that directorate.
What is the situation?
What is the situation? What do you have on ground? Say yes. You now call management meeting. Hey, what is your opinion about this?
Yeah, I quite agree with you.
You come out. Before this time, you will have come because leadership drives everything.
Yeah.
So you will have come with something. You get consultants outside privately. People don't know them. So I don't take the excuse that, I've just come in, I've not settled down. That means you are not ready to work. It's the state of emergency that we are in. Like Mr. President said, he said the government is new. Give us some breathing space. Mr. President did not give the citizens a breather
when he said fuel
subsidy is gone. And he admitted that even his speechwriters did not include it, but that he was possessed by courage. That's what he said in France.
Yeah.
He said it, it's on my words. He said he was possessed.
I think he hinted it at the president's speech too.
Yeah, and what happened? A writer said it must have been, it wasn't a right spirit that possessed, because the problem that we are in, no right spirit can plunge over 200 million people into multidimensional poverty. And then the NLC, coming to your last part of the question, is that, have they been taken seriously?
Now, do you feel that sense? Because you just said it, that prior to now, they had meetings and they would just send 3 people who probably may not
Sometimes
even
meeting
have
doesn't even hold.
a comprehensive knowledge of the discussions and how to go into it.
And the chairman is even among them.
And how to negotiate with the organized labor.
Yes.
So do you think federal government is taking them seriously as we speak?
I will say yes, and I will say no. Yes, in the sense that for the fact that they have been on the road about this, it should be the 3rd time. There was an initial strike, warning strike. We've also had a protest. I think it was a 1-day protest.
2 days.
2 days. Yeah, 2 days protest across the country, and that added effect. And the warning that they gave after the last 2-day warning strike was that the next strike was going to be without notice and it would be indefinite. But they went against their own word.
Okay.
The strike, they gave government long notice. So, and that even made government to even prepare somehow, even though they are not as proactive as I would have thought anyway. But the no aspect for me is that I have said so here. I've said so elsewhere where I've spoken on this matter. The NLC is representing not just the Nigerian workers in the civil service, public service or whatever. The NLC is supposed to represent the citizens, because the civil society, which I belong, is not doing enough in a time like this. The people that used to...
No, but NLC is the largest civil society. What else do you expect?
Yeah, no. Why they are not strong enough for me to be able to engage government is that their demands, like I've said, even if federal government decides to meet NLC demands, it would not address the challenges that we have been plunged into. So the NLC is not...
NLC's plan is not to completely address the issue. NLC's plan is to at least... No, is to create a situation where at least there will be some kind of relief and respite for the average Nigerian. Of course, we know that government cannot give all. You understand? I know exactly what you're trying to say.
Let me tell you something.
You had said it on this show before that NLC needed to consult with experts who understand how to do the negotiations and what the exact demand should be.
Exactly.
I quite agree with you.
So if you do not know your problem, how would you know how to ask for solution? Even solution...
But for the first time, majority are commending the NLC.
But the NLC is operating below the kind of standard that some of us have. Why do you think that in a time like this, palliative of any measure can address Nigeria's myriads of problems?
Even the president didn't say palliatives will address. He just said palliatives will give some kind of succor while we move towards a long-term objective of his executive policies.
What are the long-term objectives? The speech, maybe you wanted to ask me that later. You didn't ask me about how I assess Mr. President's Independence Day 2023 Independence Day speech.
We are going to get it, but you can continue.
Good. That speech majorly talked about palliatives.
There were two distinct parts where he talked about, but he talked about a lot of other things.
A lot of those things.
Security, talked about the economy, talked about jacking up industries.
There are no clear policy thrust. There are no programs in the manifesto. I know the APC has a manifesto. Unfortunately, during the campaigns, citizens, parties, community leaders, for whatever reason, they have not been engaging people canvassing for votes so that they can say, okay, this sector, this is what we are going to do. And you remember that APC completely distanced themselves from engagement in town hall meetings. So, but I know
during
campaigns, but they have a manifesto. Nobody should come to look for power without clear vision. So you bring out the manifesto in this aspect, the blueprint that you are going to run with, and let the citizens have a buy-in.
But you'll agree with me that at this point now, the only manifesto the president is running with now is the subsidy, removal of subsidy, the palliatives. Those policies he's been reading, because that also formed the fulcrum of his speech.
The removal of the subsidy is not the policy.
No, I'm talking about the palliatives.
The palliative, I've always said, is an insult.
Yes, just like Dr. Oso said too.
Sincerely speaking, we can't be talking about palliative over this kind of crisis. Even the poorest of the poor don't need the palliative. They need government to give good governance, bring up policies, implement them, and let the economy be stable. Nigerians have been fending for themselves. I have never been more proud of being a Nigerian than now. And why is that so?
Why is that so?
There are countries in Africa, I'm not talking about even other developed countries or other developing countries of the world. What we have passed through, smaller countries in Africa will not pass through it, the country will be burning. But citizens are going about seeing how to fend for themselves because their lives matter and they feel they don't have leadership. So you must provide leadership for yourself. Some people will have been killed just by falling prey to riots, to their robberies, yes, but the rate of even robbery that we are seeing and attacks is not at the scale that we will have been seeing. A number of people will have been killed by now. The situation is so bad. I deal with people. My NGO has people, vulnerable people, people with issues, some of them wealthy people that government have crushed them and they want to breathe. I mean, people that you think they are millionaires, they are suffering, they are dying, but nobody to go to. So a typical Nigerian, no matter how poor he is very independent, because what brought them there has been the lack of governance. A number of levels, there is nothing like governance. People only occupy public offices and believe that once they are there, they are not answerable to you. They are emperors. When they come to your community, you have to give them gifts. And you find governors, you find even local government chairmen that have nothing to offer. When they visit the community, they will give them cow, give them goats, give them yam, give them farm produce, because the community feels since he has come, so that we have to honor him. It's our tradition. We are very hospitable. He will remember us. And they leave. They don't, even they make promises, they don't come back to carry out the promises. So there is no leadership. And another good thing for Mr. President is that he has agreed that Nigeria's problem is lack of mismanagement and lack of leadership. So if these are the issues, how do we address them? We have to look back at where we are coming from. If the foundation is destroyed, there's nothing like the scripture says the righteous can do. Nigeria became independent because the founding fathers knew that we need to operate as federating units. We must go back to that and fast forward in the conversations that have trended over the years on the way forward, because there have been problems. I remember when Fela sang for so many years ago, water, light, food or house, and all that. The decades ago, no food, no water, no house, and you go to the bus, 44 sitting, 99 standing, and the promise was that in year 2000 all those things will have been settled, and the year 2000 was like
23
decades.
years.
That was like
after it now.
Yes, and we got to 2000, and then the vision 2010, 2020, 2020, and all those. I mean,
the MDGs,
yes,
Millennium Development
but
Goals.
In all the talks, in all the development plans we've had as a country, there are numbers of them. One plan that will have been a bus stop, a think tank for every administration, happens to be the 2014 confab. And I'm going to take some quotes from that confab, and then we'll be able to look at labor. You provided the secretariat staff that worked during the 2014 confab that former President Jonathan set up, which had representatives from every sector. The greatest preeminent kings in the land were there. The sultans of this world were there. The Obamotas. All sectors. The NBA,
The
NMA,
brains.
the students, the physically challenged, they were brought
Civil
together.
society.
But one political party described that very confab as diversionary. And they refused to participate officially. But they allowed their members to be part of the confab.
I remember.
And that party
It's in power today.
is in power today. It's the APC. And permit me please, let me just
No,
review
feel free.
because we need to challenge our leaders.
Feel free.
His Excellency, our President now, this is what he said about the 2014 confab that has over 600 recommendations, over 10,000 pages of report. He said, the National Assembly has devoted time to the review of the country's constitution. What again is the purpose of Jonathan's national confab? It is a way of fooling Nigerians. There is no law backing it. I am not a confused man, so I cannot support the confab. Those in support have proved to be confused. He was addressing the press when the governor of the governor of Osun State, Ogbeni Rauf went to meet with him. And there are more to it.
Excuse me.
The man that said something that really pained me when he said, because I heard him. I heard him and I felt bad that somebody can come and inherit an asset but then turn it to a liability. Was the former SGF, Babachir Lawal.
Okay, Babachir Lawal.
Listen to this. One thing he said that Buhari is too busy to study the report of National Conference. It's not a priority to the Buhari administration. The government of Buhari has not taken decision on the 2014 National Conference. I understand that some Nigerians want it implemented, but the government has been too busy with key areas of governance to talk about exercise that we thought was essentially diversionary and sort of maybe a job for the boys.
Which was almost the same language that Tinubu
Exactly.
used.
A job for the boys. He called the sultans, he called all the eminent citizens, all stakeholders that they were boys.
Council, civil society, professional bodies.
He now said, if you remember, it was reported that almost everybody in the committee got 7 million. What is 7 million in 2014? That will have made one to speak so roughly to the most eminent citizens that gathered to profess solution. And we wonder it essentially as a job for the boys. They probably produce a document that is good and commendable, but I mean, this government is too busy with very more vital areas of governance. We are not intending to spend our time reading reports. The exercise of governance is not about reading reports. The reports are here, so many volumes that, for example, it would take me like 7 days to go through, and I wonder what happens to my work while I am reading it. While the economy needs attention, unemployment is there, insecurity is there, people are blowing up pipelines, and so on. Let me just stop there. That was Babachir Lawal. It's reported in the Vanguard. That was on June 27, reported in short.
Before his own challenges started. But I want to ask a question.
Yes.
Reading that report will not translate to probably executing it.
Good. We go from there. That's where I'm going to.
Exactly.
What was the essence of the report? That report addressed every conceivable area of the challenges the country faced. Revenue sharing, devolution of powers, two-tier of the police, local government elections,
autonomy of
local government and state creations.
Yeah, we can go on and on.
We can go on and on.
On and on.
And solutions were preferred. But because there were people that believed in opposition party. And being in opposition, no matter how good a governing power does a thing, you must condemn it, you must deride it. And that was why I thank Dr. Bolaji Akinyemi. Professor Bolaji Akinyemi. He described Babakir Lawal's statement as being very, very crude and rude. Okay. Now, fast forward. We are looking for solution. And the last administration was not given to knowledge. We're kind of, I would say, allergic to ideas, allergic to academic gathering. Even Mr. President, like the former president, like we knew, has never written a book from what I've learned, does not go to present papers, apart from on Islamic stuff that he spoke something that has been trending over the years. So, but those that worked with him refused to help him. But I see Waju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a very broad-minded person. He said what he said then in 2014 because he needed to protect his party. If these people, Jonathan succeeds,
he was playing opposition.
He was playing opposition.